So where do we start, Dr. Khan? That's the question. Well, the first thing you need to do today is you need to become aware that you have more power than you think you do. Let me explain. You have power over the decision on how to teach content from your curriculum. You're licensed to do that. Number two, you get to decide how to control the quality of the work students produce. You create the criteria. And number three and four, you are looking at actively involving your students, and you also have complete control on how you're going to do the assessment of your students. Why not think about a rubric instead of a normative assessment or a standardized assessment? Okay? So let's talk a little bit about the levels at which you should be assessing students' engagement. I call it the level 1 through level 6. I want you to decide wherever you are, what level are you at with regards to respectable works. This serves sort of a gauge for you, a good gauge. Are you a Quant 1 engager as a teacher? Here's what a Quant 1 engager does. A Quant 1 engaging teacher is one who just accepts passive compliance. That means if you sit in your neat little rows, you keep quiet, you do what I tell you to do, you're passive, you're okay, and you get your grade, and I'm happy, you are happy. And what you're creating, and I call this, in my words, a confident incompetent. Yeah, you have someone very confident, but really incompetent because you are not working on things that really do matter. Your Quant number 2, if you are a Quant 2 level teacher, I call this the superficial intent. This is where you have to get students to memorize everything that you say or do via rote learning without attaching any meaning to what they're learning. You just have to know it. I'm sorry, but you just have to know that stuff. That's level 2. Quant level number 3, now we're moving up. Notice? Now we're moving to cognitive kinetic. By the way, all of these words, these are Dr. Khan words. And cognitive kinetic, sort of, I figured, you know, there's some energy going on in your mind. It's kinetic, meaning moving. And when it's moving, you're trying to make sense out of things, which means you're taking inputs, you're taking in data, and you're trying to translate it and interpret it the best way you know how. Okay, but that's all you are at. If you are a Quant 4 teacher, guess what? You are, in my opinion, a limbic teacher. Let me explain that. You're the one who goes to the amygdala, which is right about here, the emotional center of your brain, and you poke at it every day because you want kids to become emotional about what they learn. You get them excited, you get them connected, and you get them to find purpose and get them all excited. You are a limbic teacher or a Quant 4 teacher. The next one as you move up is Quant 5, and that is cognitive affiliation. Affiliation meaning affiliating to yourself, being in your own zone, understanding that, hey, I like what I'm learning. I'm now sort of working with this material. This material makes complete sense to me. I now am vested in what I'm learning, and I feel like this is going to make a difference to me. I actually can see the value. Like Sophia, she saw the value of that purse. Sophia sees the value of that scarf. And that's why she stayed with it for 3 hours non-stop. Okay? Because she wanted to get there. She had this wonderful cognitive affiliation. She is always going to be in her zone. Notice she's in her zone right now. And last but not least is Quant 6. And I call this natural enrichment. Natural enrichment, what this means is that the reward is in the work that you're producing. I don't have to give you, hey, an M&M. I don't have to give you a pizza party. I don't have to do any of that because you find that so self-satisfying that none of that's needed because you know you're doing this out of satisfaction and you can see this immediate wonderful value. So let's take a look at this chart. Most teachers out there are in this field. If you look at this pie chart that I've created, the large area is most of us are this passive compliance mode. All of our teaching is directed in that particular area. We want kids to obey, follow, and just work on stuff, whether it's important or not really putting a lot of thought into what we are doing. The second area is, this is where we ought to be. We need to be moving towards Quant 6, which is the natural enrichment. Let me go back to the previous one. The previous one, we have passive compliance, which is where we are. The second one is natural enrichment. This is where we need to be. And all of the other slivers, the other pieces in there, I still believe we need to have number one, Quant 1. I still believe we need Quant 2. We still believe we need Quant 3. I want you to notice that we're not throwing those out, but we're making them less important. And that's my point today. There are some things you just have to memorize. But the focus here, folks, is on the natural enrichment where kids love to learn. And you, as a teacher, play a pivotal point in making that happen. So what do? We have to move towards more of an authentic engagement scenario. When you think of this word authentic engagement, what comes to mind? Anybody? When you think of authentic engagement, what do I mean by this? Real world, thank you, real world. It must have real world applications. Sophia is experiencing real world applications. She doesn't want to get cold in the wintertime. That's a real world application, okay? Authentic engagement will occur when the work is designed in a way that appeals to the values, the needs, learning styles, and learning strengths that are real to students. And we have to make this real. And how do we do that? Well, number one, we need to consider 4 very important factors when thinking about Sophia. Number one, I need to know that she's knowledgeable. Number 2, the second ingredient, self-determined. Number 3, extremely strategic. That means there is a beginning time, end time, and she's going to do this in her time. And number 4, an empathetic thinker, someone who can feel what they would be doing in the future as a result of finding value in the work today. Okay? So what does research tell us about successful learning? Well, let me tell you. It involves the interaction between the learner. You must have the learner. You must have materials. The teacher is most important in part of this whole thing because the teacher is the inventor and the leader of the work. And it also involves an in-depth creation of learning opportunities, and the teacher moves this forward. Okay? Something else you need to know, that every child has a thing called inner speech. This inner speech is a conversation that they should be having with themselves. Yes, it's also called an internal dialogue about what is it I need to do to accomplish this task, and they need to become decision makers during that inner speech moment. So I wrote down, children learn when they engage in activities and dialogue with others, usually adults and more capable peers. So what is this inner speech all about? Well, this cannot be promoted. It cannot happen at a larger scale if we do not have a capable peer or an adult engaging them in that conversation. For example, we had an engagement today with Sophia. And Sophia, I asked her why she's doing what she's doing. She gave me some reasons and answers. What that does, it's self-reinforcing to her, letting her know that someone really cares about this. And now I'm moving on to a bigger project. From a purse, I'm now moving on to a scarf. Wow. Who knows what you're going to do next? A blanket, maybe? No. Well, we're getting there, aren't we, Sophia? All right, there are 5 maxims on teacher-student interaction that you need to know about. Number 1, the first thing you need to know is that you must make the assumption, whether you have a struggling learner, a gifted learner, an average learner, that the student is competent. We must make that assumption because we want to have high expectations of all students. Number 2, know the student's strengths and challenges. Can they do this, really? Or are we setting them up for failure? Number 3, follow the student's lead. Follow that lead. Number 4, share an interest in that task. And I'm excited about this, and Sophia knows I'm excited about this. So now she's probably going to repeat this at a higher level. to impress her dad. And number 5, connect learning to everyday life. We have to do this. We have to do this. We must find ways to connect everything we do in our classroom to daily life, because we're working on immediate value, we're looking at intrinsic value, we're looking at that task. So quantum work design guidelines. Here's something you need to put into practice on how you start to create this quantum work. You need to begin with the end in mind. For example, Sophia saw this purse in her mind, and she started to work diligently towards that purse. She began with that end. Okay? Think of work as a puzzle. Look at the big picture first, and then break down the puzzle pieces and just add them in one at a time. And eventually you're going to get there. Number 3, focus on the product. Not the teacher's performance, but the product, the work that's being created. And look at how core subjects can be integrated. For example, math, science, social studies, even PE, music, art. Create and communicate criteria for assessment. Let them know up front what the expectations are, what the criteria is, and get them to perform to those performance standards. And the next one you're probably asking is, what's with them? Well, you have to with them. What's in it for me is the question Sophia is asking. What's in it for me is the students asking. And you need to put that up front. Tell them exactly what it is. Or show me the beef. Yeah, come on. Tell me what this is all about. You want me to do 10 hours of this work? No, it's not mindless. This is going to be something. Someday down the road, you know, this is going to be helpful to you. And last but not least is provide frequent quality feedback as the product develops, More guidelines, some additional ones. Let's talk about how to personalize the product. Let's talk about asking the students to do some self-assessments on the product, okay? Use different types of presentation styles, not one lecture method. Use hands-on activities, cooperative learning strategies. We'll talk more about that. Talk about innovative ways of dealing with curriculum. Create products that really do stand out. Get kids to perform. Children are not performing in our classroom. They sit behind desks, yes, and paper, pencil, and take notes, and that's all we do. Children are built to perform. They want to perform. They need to perform. And we need to provide the opportunities and the apparatus to do that.